Some mysteries were never meant to be solved. Some crimes left no clues. And some people vanished forever. Welcome to MysteryLedger, where real mysteries are uncovered. For Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, was a game of high-stakes chess played across borders. For years, Mexican and U.S. authorities hunted him. Raids, surveillance, international cooperation. Every approach hit a wall. He didn't operate like old-school cartel bosses. He was elusive, adaptive, unpredictable, a ghost in the machine. Despite a reward of millions for his capture, the man stayed free, protected by the very mountains we searched. Until February 2026. Intelligence finally pinpointed a silent frequency. The decade of waiting was over. Operation Omega was go. The capture wasn't a loud confrontation. It was a surgical strike, the culmination of a decade of patience and betrayal. El Mencho led one of the fastest rising criminal organizations in history, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, a global machine known as CJNG. From their heartland in Jalisco, they established total territorial dominance over strategic corridors, critical for the world's narcotics supply. Their routes snaked north with military precision, securing every major entry point into the United States, the world's largest market for their product. But their reach didn't stop at the border. CJNG secured the silent Pacific routes, controlling the intake of precursors from Asia and the export of refined product. Authorities linked the network to ports in China, Rotterdam, and Valencia, a transcontinental empire of methamphetamine, fentanyl, and cocaine. Their operational model was aggressive, decentralized, and highly adaptive. But here's what made it different. While the cartel projected strength publicly, El Mencho did not. He avoided interviews, avoided public celebrations, avoided digital exposure, no social media theatrics, no recorded speeches. He was a phantom in a digital age. He operated through layers, commanders beneath him, cells beneath them, each insulated, each compartmentalized, a structure designed to absorb losses without collapsing. Law enforcement could arrest lieutenants or seize shipments, but reaching the top required penetrating a wall of absolute silence. That insulation made him almost impossible to target. No flashy mansions in tourist cities, no nightlife appearances, no public family displays, just operational discipline and calculated fear. The details of the hunt were buried in thousands of hours of intercepted radio chatter and encrypted digital shadows. We didn't just look for him, we mapped his entire logistical skeleton, every fuel delivery, every burner phone, every encrypted node. Drones hovered over the Sierra Madre for months, identifying the heat signatures of a private army hidden beneath the canopy. The break came from a single, overlooked detail, a customized tactical vest delivered to a remote mountain clinic. A ghost had finally left a fingerprint. We heard him before we saw him. A brief, 3-second transmission from a hidden relay station confirmed his exact coordinate block. The finer details of his compound were reconstructed using thermal imagery, down to the thickness of the walls and the timing of the guard rotations. By February 2026, the silent watch was over. We knew his patterns better than he did. Now it was time to move. Signal triangulation, financial cross-referencing, and field surveillance converged on one location. A modest rural compound, low profile, defensible terrain, loyal territory. For the first time in years, the intelligence wasn't reactive, it was predictive. We weren't chasing a rumor, we were closing a loop. The model identified the precise tactical threshold. Probability had shifted to convergence. The search for El Mencho was no longer about if, it was about when. When intelligence shifts from probability to convergence, operations follow. The model was complete. Every detail had a purpose. Every signal led to this. This was the turning point. The ghost was cornered in his own ecosystem. The decade of waiting was over. The boarding was set for the final move. Network analysis, metadata, financial forensics, human intelligence. They all pointed to the same morning in February. The breakthrough was complete. Now it was time for the kinetic phase. February 22nd, 2026, just before 3 a.m. Mexican special forces began mobilizing toward a rural compound in Jalisco. No lights, no sirens, no public roadblocks. Operational secrecy was critical, because surprise wasn't just strategic, it was survival. The night was both a shield and a weapon for the strike team. Prep was complete. Movement began. Every piece of gear, every movement was calibrated for absolute stealth against an elusive enemy. The prep was forensic. The execution would be surgical. The loop was starting to close. The strategy had shifted. Direct pursuit had hit walls for a decade. This wasn't just a raid, it was a surgical removal of the CJNG's nervous system. Objective: containment first. 2 security rings were established, an outer perimeter to prevent escape, an inner tactical unit to execute entry. Helicopter support maintained aerial surveillance. Escape routes were identified and blocked before movement began. The outer ring was locked. We weren't just going in, we were sealing the exits. This was not a raid designed to search. It was a raid designed to finish. Snipers established overwatch on every vantage point. The ghost was cornered. We knew where he was, we knew how he moved, and we knew how to seal the loop. Ready for final confirmation. Thermal imaging indicated multiple individuals inside the compound. Movement patterns suggested security personnel were awake. The probability of the target being inside reached 90%. Decisions were made. The decision was made to proceed immediately, because delay increases risk. And hesitation gives defenders time to organize. The loop was officially closed. Time was 0. The orders were silent but clear. No sirens, no warnings, just the sudden, overwhelming weight of the law. The breach was go. We hit the perimeter at its weakest node. As forces approached, resistance began almost instantly. Gunfire erupted from inside the compound. Bodyguards engaged aggressively. The silence of the night was shattered, kinetic phase active. The exchange was brief, but intense. Special forces returned controlled fire. Every round had a forensic purpose. Within minutes, the defensive positions were neutralized, structures secured. We didn't just break in, we dissected the compound's integrity until we reached the core. Every spent shell, every mark on the wall was a piece of the final ledger. Core reached, area clear. Inside the structure, officers located Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes. He had been wounded during the exchange, but he was alive. For the first time in a decade, the ghost was in custody. No dramatic standoff, no final speech, just silence. He was caught before he could reach for a weapon. Time was now the primary threat. He was stabilized and transported under heavy guard. The priority shifted from capture to survival, keeping the man alive for a courtroom he would never see. Stabilization attempts active, convoy moving. The transport was a high-speed gauntlet through the Jalisco heartland. Every second was calculated to beat the internal clock of his injuries. The operation had lasted minutes. Pursuit had lasted years. But time ran out. The man who had architected a decade of violence was claimed by the very cycle he had created. He died in transit. This was not a peaceful arrest. It was a decisive end. The ghost of the Sierra Madre was gone, but the board was already resetting for the next game. With El Mencho gone, the question isn't if the machine survives. It's who commands it now. For civilians in cartel-influenced areas, stability matters more than politics. Leadership transitions affect local extortion patterns and the perceived safety of daily routines. Communities become pressure gauges. If a successor maintains discipline, life may appear unchanged. If fragmentation occurs, extortion disputes and localized violence increase. Globally, the narrative will frame this as a victory or a warning. But criminal enterprises adapt faster than headlines. Transnational networks survive through decentralization. If CJNG transitions to a less visible, more financially focused model, it may become harder to dismantle. When a leader falls, markets react, sometimes violently. Cartels are not built on personality. They are built on systems, logistics, finance, territorial enforcement. Removing a leader weakens symbolism, not necessarily infrastructure. The coming months will determine whether this marks a structural weakening or simply a change at the top. Power does not vanish. It reorganizes. So here's the real question. Was this the beginning of CJNG's decline, or simply a transition to a more disciplined, less visible phase? Power doesn't vanish. It shifts. Every removal only forces the system to reorganize and adapt. The cycle remains unbroken. Drop your analysis below. Do you think cartel structures can truly be dismantled? Or are they designed to survive leadership loss? I want to hear your perspective, especially if you follow organized crime strategy, security policy, or geopolitical trends. Your data completes the file. If you value deep structured breakdowns, not surface headlines, subscribe. Because we don't just follow the news, we analyze the systems behind it. Mysteries are solved. and some are forgotten, and some are still waiting. You're watching Mystery Ledger. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you in the next investigation.